on YouTube. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Just so everyone knows, we are streaming live.
Good afternoon. We'll go on and get started, Bethany, and hopefully we'll have.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know as soon as we have a quorum. Max is joining now, so that gives us 8.
Okay, and so we need to have 2 more?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead and start recording as well.
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon again, everyone. Sorry about that. And welcome to the City of Charleston Citizens Police Advisory Council meeting. My name is Twan Fielding. I'm the current chairman for the council. And we are so happy that those of you have dialed in and those members who have connected on have been able to join us today. Hopefully everyone has their agenda with them. So let us start off with introduction of members. If each person would introduce themselves and say, please, your district that you are representing. And since I'm talking, I'll go ahead and state that I am, again, Twan Fielding, and I'm a member of District 3, and my councilman is Jason Saccharin.
Juan, do you want me to go through the list, or do you want people to just...
Yeah, I think the last time we did it where you called the roll pretty much. And then each person, when you called their name, then they were able to do their greeting and state the district they represent and their city councilman.
Perfect. All right. First is Frank Walsh.
Frank Walsh, even though my screen says Barbara on it. No, I am Frank today. Councilwoman Marie Del Chapo.
All right. Ryan Davis.
Yeah, Ryan Davis, District 2. Kevin Cheeley is our councilman.
All right. District 4 is Mary Alice Mack, and she is not in attendance. Paul Tamburino.
Paul Tamburino, District 5, Councilman Carl Brady.
All right. George Palmer. He is here. Looks like he's muted. All right, I'll go ahead and go to the next one. Emily Broom is not in attendance, but she is District 8 for Councilmember Seekings. Melvin Hack Ezel Jr.
Hack Ezel, West Ashley, Peter Shade is my councilman.
All right, Camden Norris Shields.
Camden Shields, District 10, and Harry Griffin is my councilman.
Thanks, Cam. Matt Austin is not in attendance, but he is representing District 11 for Councilmember Appel. Doris Grant.
Doris Grant, Carol Jackson, District 12.
All right. I don't think Jerome is here yet, Twan, but he is a mayor selection. Max Milliken.
Max Milliken, mayoral appointee.
All right. And then our 2 high school students, which they have technically not been appointed yet. They'll be appointed at this next city council meeting, but that is Becca White and Moyu Yamaguchi.
Becca and Mayu, please feel free to state what school you are a student at. We're so happy that you've joined us in waiting for your appointment to actually be approved by the council. And since this is your second time actually joining with us in waiting, please state your school and your grade level.
I am Moyu Yamaguchi. I am a junior at Academic Magnet High School.
I'm Becca White, and I'm going to be a senior at Porter Gals.
Thank you. Great to have all of the members present, especially our high school students. And Mayor, since you are on, we're so happy that you've joined us this evening. Please feel free to give a greeting if you would like, sir, at this time.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I wanted to join y'all and just thank you for your efforts. It's so vital that our citizens connect with our police department, and I appreciate everyone's time and effort to this really important committee and to our ongoing efforts of improving our city and improving our police department and our community relations. God bless you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you taking time to join us tonight.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
Bethany, George Palmer still, I see his mic is still probably not working, but
Okay.
he is in District 6,
Yes.
and his councilman is Councilman William Dudley Gregory.
Yes, ma'am. And we have 9, so we need one more person in order to approve the minutes.
Okay, well, while we are waiting for that one additional member to join us, or even others, I do want to state that you notice on the agenda, we have farewell and appreciation to Mr. Kevin Smith, who is from District 7. Kevin's councilman is Councilman Keith Waring. And unfortunately, priorities and other work commitments have challenged his schedule. And so he did send an email letting us know that he would no longer be able to serve. And he's also contacting his council member. So hopefully a replacement will be discussed for him as well at the August 17th meeting of the City Council. And then in addition, we have Mr. Joe Lysett, who was selected by Mayor Tecklenburg. And unfortunately, his schedule is not allowing him, some changes in his schedule have prevented him from being able to continue to serve. Both of these gentlemen have been on the committee since the inception. We've appreciated their time and their efforts that they have contributed to where we stand today. So if you get a chance to do a text message or an email out to Kevin Smith and Joe Lysett, please try to do so to thank them for their time and commitment. And hopefully Mayor Tecklenburg will be able to give us another appointee to replace Joe Lysett through the August 17th appointments. And thank you, Bethany. We now have a quorum, so that is wonderful and in perfect time. We are now at the point of approval of the minutes since we did the roll call and combined the roll call with the welcome of and the introduction of all of the members for the council. Hopefully you all got a chance to read, all members got a chance to read the minutes. Any questions on anything in the minutes, any corrections to provide?
Madam Chair, I move to accept the minutes as published, please.
Thank you. It's been properly moved. Is there a second?
I second that.
That's Cam Shields. Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt the minutes as provided. You ready for question? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please show me a thumbs up either by your reactions or with your thumb. Thank you. Thank you. Cam, I don't see your thumb yet, but since you second that, wonderful, great. Thank you very much. All of those who are opposed, please show the same sign since we're virtual. Great, no opposition.
Oh, it does look like Doris has her hand.
Doris
No.
has her hand raised.
No, that was an error.
That was your
Sorry.
voting, right?
Yeah, I was
Thank you.
trying to take my thumb down, so.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So our minutes are approved. We had, incidentally, I wanted to state at this time too, that we did have a request that came through from, I believe it was Channel 5 News, that wanted to receive the recommendations that were discussed at our June meeting. And so fortunately, we have approved the minutes, and with the approval of the minutes from the June meeting, we will release that information appropriately. Okay? Thank you, everyone. Now we're at the point where we have citizens participation period. Bethany's informed me that we do not have anyone signed up to speak to us tonight. However, there was a comment that was submitted, and I've asked Bethany if she would please read that comment out to us so that all of us would be able to hear.
Yes, ma'am. This is from Butch Kennedy. And he says, after over 6 years of enduring unspeakable pain and trauma in our city, I remain optimistic. My hope is that this group, the Citizens Police Advisory Council, could act as a facilitator to bring stakeholders from diverse groups together and generate conversations on difficult issues that can lead to solutions that can impact public safety concerns for all residents of the Charleston community. What happened on January 6th at our nation's capital opened my eyes to the fact that if it could happen there, it could happen anywhere. And on August 15th, Open Carry becomes law in our state, which magnifies this issue tenfold. I believe that CPAC could and should lead the effort to bring Charleston together by hearing the voices and concerns of all of its people.
Thank you for reading that comment to us. And if Mr. Kennedy is listening, we appreciate you having submitted that comment to us. We do have on the agenda tonight, under our section of updates, we do have Councilman Jerome Harris, who's going to share with us King Street Business Owners Outreach Request. And I believe Mr. Kennedy's comment is related to that. So hopefully we'll be able to give some answers in that regard. Thank you, Bethany, for sharing. Now we're to council members sharing of district concerns. Any council members have any district concerns that were shared from your district to be able to share tonight?
I have a concern this is Doris Grant. I have a concern regarding speeding on the connector. It appears that some folks are using it as a racetrack.
You're talking about the full connector, right, Doris?
Right, connect the James Island connector, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You know, I heard that complaint as well, Ms. Grant, at one of my recent neighborhood presidents meetings, that after late in the evening, that literally people are doing as you described and using it as a racetrack. I did report that to Chief Reynolds, and so the traffic division was supposed to be on a kind of new alert or lookout on the expressway, but since I reported it, I hadn't heard anything back on it recently.
Max and DC Thompson have their hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I had actually seen a few vehicles within the past few weeks pulled over on the connector, and I had never seen the city police department running traffic on the James Island Expressway until I witnessed that a couple weeks ago. So I'm hoping that they keep on they keep up with that traffic patrol on the connector.
And Bethany, who's the other I was looking for the other hand raised. Oh,
DC Thompson, and now Jerome Harris does as well.
Deputy Chief Thompson.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that we did receive that complaint through the mayor's office, and I believe it came through the Neighborhood Business Services Division as well. And that was added to our complaint list spreadsheet that the traffic division monitors. I would just say that it has been difficult over the years for speeding enforcement coming into downtown. If we're at the bottom of the base of the bridge, we can do it there, but we've tried to find some safe spots coming into town because that's been the complaints that excessive speed coming down on Calhoun Street. So we are trying to take a different approach to doing speed enforcement there. So that is on the complaint list, and we're monitoring that weekly.
Thank you. Councilman Harris.
I just want to affirm that entering off of Harborview Road onto the connector all week this week, I've taken my grandson over to Daniels Island, and 3 out of 5 days there was a Charleston Police cruiser parked there at that entrance to monitor. So that deployment is happening.
Very good. Frank, I see you.
Yeah, thank you. About 2 months ago, I spoke with Captain Bruder about some complaints about 526 trucks in the left lane, trucks blocking. He said they were going to start a program to try to get the trucks to move to the right lane where they should be. And haven't heard anything yet.
Thank you.
It's 526, not just on Daniel Island, all the way through.
All the way through.
He's actually on leave this week, and I'll follow up with him when he gets back next week to make sure you have a response.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Have we been able to do anything about the synchronization of the traffic lights at the crosstown at Cumming Street? If you come through, and I just recently did that same drive, when you're on Cumming Street and you are leaving from, let's say, Bogart or even Morris Street, and you come to the crosstown, there are two traffic lights that are very close together. And one will change and turn green for you. And if that line of traffic is proceeding on to the next traffic light at the other side of the crosstown, that light is still red. So then that causes other cars to either decide if they want to sit in the intersection that enters the I-26, or if they will wait until they see if the next light changes to green. Have we been able to do anything about that?
I remember that was your original request, I think 2 years ago, and we did have I don't want to say a study done over there, but we did assign that to the traffic division. I'll follow up with them to see if that's still on their list. To be honest with you, I thought it was corrected, but if it's still doing the same thing, then we'll look into it further. But I have follow up for you as well on that one.
Thank you, sir. I ran through that. I had that incident happen last Sunday and the Sunday before. Oh, Councilman Palmer?
Yes, there's a caveat to that issue. My neighborhood association requested a change to the timing of the light on the crosstown at Cumming because of a fatality early last year. I believe that was January 2020. There was a fatality because it's a very long distance from one side to the other. So the two lights moving in the opposite directions used to be in sync. They were taken out of sync to give people a longer time to cross. So basically the light on the, I'm not sure what that direction is. The side that's going onto the interstate changes first, out of sync with the side that's coming into the city. It has a certain timing, and it's basically set up currently so that people can walk to the very large median, stop and wait on the next light. Because a gentleman was run over trying to get all the way across. And if you don't start when the lights change, it's a very long walk, and he didn't make it. It was just at sunrise, just before sunrise, and he actually got hit by a car, and that was a fatal accident. So I'm not saying that it shouldn't be changed. I'm saying that when we change it, we have to keep that in mind. It's a dangerous intersection to cross if those two sides are in sync. So as we make those changes, we should make sure we don't override the changes that were made for that safety feature.
Now, this change, though, that I'm questioning would allow a person time to cross if you're looking at crossing over the crosstown going towards Fishburne Street.
Yep.
Yeah. So see, it would have the extended time and not have one change and not the other.
My only point was that as they make that change, that synchronization is in more than one direction, I guess is what I'm saying. There's more than the two lights involved. One of those lights is involved in something else. And so as that change is made, we need to make sure that we don't sync up the lights moving in the other direction across, because we've already had a bad result there. Actually, two that I'm aware of, because we also had a fatality on the other side about 5 years ago.
Yeah, there have been numerous car accidents at that location as well of church members that I know of for sure that I attend church with. There were two other things. There's Ryan, there's Max.
And I was just going to say really quick, I also cover the traffic and transportation meeting for the city, and that would definitely be a question for them. I know they've been talking about numerous intersections that they're doing pedestrian improvements on with the synchronization of the lights at the same time. I know that question comes up a lot, and the answer normally is that when you synchronize one light, you have to go through and synchronize all of them at the same time. You can't just synchronize one intersection.
Understand. And Deputy Chief Thompson, you said you all are going to look at that and let us know something?
Yeah, and just to reiterate, but I think it was George that was talking. We just go over and we'll monitor. We'll give our recommendations to traffic and transportation. It's up to them to work with the DOT or the city to make any change to that. It wouldn't be the police department. We're just kind of the field guys that'll go over there and just watch the intersection. Do research the accidents and that type of thing.
Thank you.
Yes, I have it on the list.
Thank you. Ryan, your hand is up. Councilman Davis.
Oh, sure. Thank you. This is actually fairly common to all districts, but we're still having issues of people going through cars at night, which while I know the simple solution is to lock your cars, not everybody does. And people still do get irritated, or not irritated, but I guess they do get irritated by it because you would think your vehicle would be safe in your own driveway at that point. Is there any sort of plan or anything going on right now that can help with that? I would love to hear something on that, please.
We do have a program for the police department. I don't want to go into all the specifics because it is very successful. But it's basically a program where we have electronic monitoring to where, if we're having car break-ins or stolen cars in a specific area, items that are stolen can be tracked. It is a successful program, and we, have made multiple arrests over the years with that. But it moves from team to team, from patrol team to patrol team. And yes, I would say that a majority of our problems are property crimes. Obviously violent crimes are a main priority with the city to reduce crime and the fear of crime. But we do have numerous car break-ins and stolen vehicles. And I'll tell you, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but most of them are unlocked and then items left in there. So it is a huge problem. But we do meet every Wednesday to go over all the crime that is occurring in each patrol district and go line by line to make sure that we're addressing every problem as we should. And a part of addressing the problems of the property crimes are just some interesting technology that we purchased over the years to be able to put out, and to take it even further, the package thefts and that type of thing. So we are doing some interesting things with that, and it has been very successful. I'd be happy to, you could come in and we can show you the what we do, and I can put you in contact with the sergeant that runs that program. But again, just very successful, very, forward thinking technology.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And Ryan, if you just want to reach out to me privately, if you would like to meet with them, or if that satisfies, just let me know.
Sure. I'll reach out. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I believe Max Milligan, Councilman, you had your hand up too, right?
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to thank the department for starting to pull cars over that are speeding on the connector, because I understand that it is a very dangerous bridge and cars are moving at high speeds, and the shoulder is pretty small. I think it is less than the size of an actual lane. So I understand that. I guess what I'm saying is I appreciate the officers doing that. And I hope they remain doing that as long as they can do it safely. And yeah, I just appreciate that they've started doing that. Also, I know that the county put out some statistics a couple years ago about stolen firearms from unlocked vehicles and how big of an issue that is in Charleston County. And I see the signs that the city puts in neighborhoods around in city neighborhoods, just reminding they're the in cursive, where it says, please remember to ... lock your car, shut your garage, things of that nature. I think that's effective because it reminds people on their way out of their neighborhood, did I lock my car? Did I shut my garage? And I think that's a pretty good campaign for what Councilmember Davis was referring to.
Thank you. Any other comments,
Looks
district
like
concerns to share?
Mr. Harris has his hand up.
That's
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you. A couple concerns in conversations with as folks return to church and social involvements, the increased violence, gun violence is of concern, and folks want to have a sense of how they can actually become involved in part of solutions. There were also concerns or questions, not really concerns, understanding the dynamic and the background on the recently, I think, enacted mayor ordinance on protests and demonstrations, how they will be monitored and the changes that were been made there. Folks have some questions to desire to understand that dynamic and how it's going to move forward, and looking to the CPAC and for assistance in getting information, more information out to the community.
Thank you, Councilman Harris. Any other concerns to share? I'm not sure if all of you got a chance to see it yet or not, but the Special Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation has voted to deliver their report to City Council and to Mayor Tecklenburg for acceptance. That will occur at the City Council meeting on August the 17th. If you get a chance to pull the report up, please download it and take a read at it. I know it's 585 pages or 545 pages. However, you can get to the section with the 125 recommendations. They are organized based on the separate divisions that the commission had. And you remember Ms. Johnson came and spoke with us at our last meeting. She is willing to come back to talk with us, but there are probably some nuggets in there that we would be able to help out with, given the guidelines for CPAC and the items that the recommendations that commission is recommending to City Council and the mayor for acceptance. If you're not able to download it, please shoot me an email and I could send it to you as well.
Madam Chair, if I could, point of personal privilege, since I chaired the Criminal Justice Reform Subcommittee, I can point specifically to pages 19 through 23, which has the components, specific recommendations around criminal justice reform. And it does touch on some of the conversations that we've been having. So if you want to do some cheating, crib notes in terms of what's relevant for our work, pages, actually it's page 18 to 22 in the document, in the draft.
Thank you very much, Councilman Harris. I did note that the Post and Courier even mentioned two of the recommendations, specifically the one regarding police reform, recommending increased transparency by enhanced public access to information, body camera footage, acquisition of military equipment, improved accessibility of information via social media, and conducting quarterly public safety listening sessions. That one struck me because I know that's something that the Traffic Stop Committee had spoken about at their meeting previously. And then another item that was listed in there was to develop and enhance ordinances that require police accountability. So it really is a good read. So please, since Jerry has helped us to go just to the specific pages, please take some time before our next meeting and seek out those pages 18 through 22, as well as the rest of the document if you're able. Okay, subcommittee reports, communications. I asked also if Paul Tamburino, Vice Chairman Paul Tamburino, and Councilman Ezell would please share also the information that they discussed representing us at the meeting with the Nigerian contingent. So Paul, after you give the report from subcommittee communications, you and Hack can play back and forth and let us know how that meeting went with the Nigerian contingent.
Yes, ma'am. All
Thank
right,
you.
so fellow council members, I've submitted my report in writing, so I'm not going to reread it to you. Out of our discussion, we did have a motion to coming from committee. So the motion would be that CPAC would conduct a series of sessions, information sessions for the community on whether it's a bi-monthly or quarterly basis, information sessions through a Zoom webinar to revolving around specific educational topics each time, and publish a calendar of that. So that's our motion to the CPAC. And once I've submitted that, I can discuss what that is.
Okay, Vice Chairman Tamburino, comes from committee. That motion, council members, comes from committee and needs no second. Any discussion?
So let me
All
give you a
those in
little
favor, well, let's continue to take that recommendation, that motion that you brought forward. Let's go ahead and carry that out. Since
You
you've
don't want
already
me to speak to it?
no one said they had any questions, so I guess they got a chance to read through, and that it was very clear. I know the way that you presented it in the report.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. So it comes from committee, needs no second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approving the motion as stated, please raise your hand. Thumbs up. Thank you. Cam?
We
Very
got it.
good, thank
Yeah.
you. So that's unanimous for those who are on. Thank you, Doris. Thank you. Okay.
So the next piece, the only thing that I would say is, as you go through the minutes of our meeting, please pay special attention, council members, to the dashboard link that we provided, the city has put together. This is something you should be disseminating to the people in your district, making sure everybody's aware. It's a very big communication tool. As we talk about transparency and understanding what's going on, this dashboard is a really good tool for not only understanding the crimes that are taking place in your neighborhoods and in your areas, the response times and things like that. So that dashboard's a lot of work, and I really think we should be promoting that. So that's really the two big pieces I had. So as the chair mentioned, our entire council was invited to attend a session. Basically, it's from the International Visitor Leadership Program. That's a group under the Department of State. And we participated, several of us participated, actually I think it was Councilman Harris and I, participated in a Zoom forum with a delegation. And this was the follow-up, that this delegation actually got to be the first Department of State contingent to be brought into the United States this year after the pandemic. So we met with 6 members from Nigeria. They're members of the Human Rights and Civic Engagement for Youth. We got together last week, and I was joined by Councilman Ezel and Councilmember-elect Yamaguchi. So it's actually great to see her there and participating. And she was, so Madam Chair, after Hat gives his commentary, I do want, if you would, allow Councilmember-elect Yamaguchi, because her perspective is also interesting based on her perspective. So from my perspective, it was a very good discussion. We gave some education to them on Charleston and the history of Charleston, and race relations, law enforcement relations with the community, the historical struggles we've seen, the wins that we've achieved, the challenges we still face, and what's coming forward. I would say that they had some very good questions for us. A lot of it's how we interact. There was some directed questioning on, do we have any programs that target disenfranchised minorities, maybe LGBTQ, the disabled. We talked about the need for probably more outreach for the Hispanic community and things like that. But I think for me, it was educational. It was a two-way street. You don't want to just do the talking. You want to be an active listener. And my commercial, the rest of you council members, is when we talk about that we're trying to engage the community, Well, our community gets bigger every time we meet with groups like this. Our community is not just the city of Charleston. And the more involvement with people like that. So as I watch their social media after they met with us, they're going out there and they've got influences all around the world. And the way they're talking about our community and what they experience is great. So, our impact is really big when we take advantage of it. Councilmember Zell?
I too thought it was a very beneficial two-way educational meeting. I thought they were most interested in determining the nature of our CPAC, which is advisory rather than oversight. And we pointed out that we've met with other such committees and councils from half a dozen different cities, and it varies from city to city in terms of what the nature and purpose of the committee is. I think they were most interested in the approach that we are taking. This has been my second experience with an international committee of this type. I spent about a month with a police captain from Nairobi, Kenya. He and I became very, very good friends, and we learned a great deal about each other's respective culture. And I think that's what they're all about. It was very definitely a beneficial two-way educational meeting, and I look forward to keeping in touch with some of those folks by social media and email, whatever.
And they were really, I will say, they were really intrigued that we had, a 15-year-old on our council, council member-elect Namaguchi. They were really impressed with her and what she brought to the table. So, council member-elect Yamaguchi, that's a long bit of words. I call you Modu. It's so easy.
So I was there at the meeting, and for me, it was one of my first in-person meetings as well. So I was able to have a much more solid view of CPAC as well as other organizations in other places, which I felt was a great insight into what I should be doing in CPAC as well as what they're trying to do, to get to know what they're trying to do in their respective areas. So I just brought to the table how as a member that is a bit younger, my surroundings are pretty different from other council members. So I think they were interested in how there was a diversity in the members of CPAC.
For sharing.
Thank you. She did awesome.
Councilman Harris, Councilman Tamburino, hold 1 minute, please. Councilman Harris, you've had your hand up for a little minute. Is that to ask a question?
I took it down, I thought, Madam Chair.
Oh, no, it's still up.
I'm down.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, no problem, no problem. Any questions, council members, for any of those who were able to attend the Nigerian contingent meeting?
Is there anything that we can take away from the Nigerian contingent and what they're working on or their structure?
So one of the big things that they were pushing, and it's, obviously it resonates with me doing communications, is, they also agree that communications leads to transparency. And so the more channels of community engagement that you have, the more transparency just becomes a natural process. And so, they did ask us, how successful have we been with our community outreach as a CPAC and understanding what our mission. And I'll be as frank with you guys as I was with them. And I said, that's our biggest weakness is where, the pandemic hit, and we can all use that as an excuse. But the truth is, that's the one piece that we're missing in all of our mandate. We're doing all these great things. We're sitting in all these people's meetings, but the one thing that very few of us, and I'll add myself to that list, very few of us are then turning around and taking that information back to our own communities. We're not attending community meetings or even promoting them or promoting these engagements. So I was very honest with them. I said, this is the point right now where we need to turn that to being our focus. I know for the communications subcommittee, but in reading and you'll see it in the minutes, when we went through the racial bias audit and the things like the Illumination Project, that was the highlight. That was like the number one thing. They talked about all these initiatives that need to happen, but the primary theme was community engagement. And we were created for community engagement. That's our mandate. And so we really, from my perspective, and when we reach out to groups like that and they ask us, we have to admit it. And we have to say that's where we really struggle. So that was the takeaway, is everybody agrees it's communication with the community, not just among ourselves and the little small group that we have. So they really, I think they appreciated the candor, because everybody presents themselves as perfect and we're doing a great job. And it makes them feel good to know that we struggle no different than they do.
Thank you, Cam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so I totally agree with their observations and Councilmember Tamburino's comments. And at what point do we try to be more proactive in the communication efforts and maybe invite the news, or even maybe try to schedule a press conference just to, if anything, announce ourselves, make sure everyone knows who we are, and then make sure that we communicate all the outlets that the citizens have to get in touch with us, rather than maybe waiting on the news to pick up our meetings. So my question is, when do we try to move forward with being more proactive with our communication?
Honestly, we have been trying to do that since the previous two meetings that we've had of CPAC. And Cam, I'm glad you asked that question, because if you look back into the minutes from our previous CPAC meeting, the communications subcommittee had gotten the council to actually approve of us providing an email address so that we could publicize that email address and citizens would be able to email us any concerns that they had, as well as allow us an opportunity to email to them any actions, any activities, any information to help to get the citizens more aware of what's going on with the police department and the community at large. So really the time to start is really post haste. So if we could, those of you who have not gotten an email address sent to Paul Tamburino, please do so that we can go ahead and have that advertisement done. And it's also important that we work on these subcommittees that we signed up to work on, so that the differences can be made. We can help the police department with the differences that need to happen to bring about some positive change with the disparities that have already been indicated through the racial bias audit. And now if you look at the recommendations from the Special Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation, you'll see more of the same there as well. So the short answer, Cam, is like yesterday, last meeting where we approved those. So it would be wonderful if we could step up to the plate and start doing that.
Madam Chair, let me point out also, you just voted on, believe it or not, you just voted on a motion, fellow council members, you just voted on a motion that addresses that. And if you hadn't read what the details were, is, meeting after meeting, we push back to the different council member, please coordinate with your city council member. Please go to these district meetings. Please have neighborhood meetings. We say it over and over. And the subcommittee, this has been an evolution of process for us. We keep ticking off saying, we crossed that bridge, nothing happened. We crossed this bridge, nothing happened. So the motion you just voted on is basically saying, we get it. Most of these council members are not doing that. And so rather than saying that we did a disclaimer and we told them, they didn't do it, we fulfilled what were our responsibility. The idea is we're going to take it to the next level. And I'm not going to say take it out of your hands, because we still want you to do that. But now as a CPAC, you all just approved us creating a calendar for the entire city to pick a topic and then start inviting your constituents to come to these centralized meetings that we will hold, so they're not dependent on an individual council member going out and making those connections. We're going to help you with that. So we obviously want you to participate, and you will participate, but this calendar will be citywide, and we'll be able to start pushing that out and say, we're taking control somewhat of getting our communications out, because we need to be responsible for that, guys. And, we just not say, well, we said it didn't happen. Okay.
I totally agree, Councilman Member Tamburino, and I'd like to take it a step further and say, can we contact local news media and get some airtime, whether it be 6 o'clock news, 11 o'clock news, or whatever we can do, just to try something even further.
Yep. And so at the last meeting, you all approved, the council approved the creation of a media coordinator to be guided by the chair. So we did that at the last meeting. And so that's in progress. We do have a list. We've gotten a list of all of the primary media contacts as it relates to what we're trying to do here. And so we now have that. And so that's going to be channeled through the chair's office. So we did that. Yeah, we're working on that now.
And the police department's Officer Francis helped us.
Right. And just so everybody knows, as part of communications, I think within the next 4 or 5 days, the police department is going to have a brand new social media director. The previous one only lasted a couple of days, so they have a new hire. I've agreed to let that person get comfortable for about a week, new hire orientation. And, I kind of made that clear that, we'll give them 3 or 4 days, and then we're going to start bombarding them so we can make sure that we're part of that onboarding process of saying we want to work hand in hand, because our communications are going to go through their social media team. We're not going to have our own independent. We want to make sure we're in line with any city, social media policies and things like that, because we're an arm of them. So we're not going to do our own.
I think that's a great idea, and something to work toward moving forward would be like maybe a monthly update that we can upload, to the social media platforms, just so that we're constantly feeding the public with information on what we're working on, what we need their help with. And, there's all kinds of content that we could add in that.
Absolutely. When the time comes, I'll probably reach out to you, Cam. So be prepared. You just volunteered yourself to help out.
Oh, wait, don't get Cam busy yet, because I have an ask of Cam here in a few minutes. Yes. If there are no other questions on Communications Subcommittee, Councilman.
One thing, I know you've heard this before, but we have a powerful, very powerful opportunity through public service announcements for educating the public and the police officers on proper behavior in a variety of situations. And I'm going to keep mentioning it until we start working on it.
And actually, that came up in the traffic stop subcommittee meeting that we went to. But before we talk traffic stop, if there are no more questions on the communication subcommittee, doesn't look like we have any others. We're moving to the policy and procedures subcommittee. The policy and procedures subcommittee did not get an opportunity to meet since our June meeting. However, you remember our minutes that we just approved from the June meeting had a wealth of recommendations from the policy subcommittee. With that, thinking that we would approve that, I have already reached out to Captain Cortella and Deputy Chief Walker to have them provide the information connected to and the statistical data relative to the May 30th and May 31st riots that were in Charleston, as what was requested by the CPAC during the June meeting. We will be meeting sometime next week. Captain Cortella is going to provide that information to me electronically, and then we will get together to discuss the information, and then I will provide you a report thereafter. Furthermore, those other recommendations that were there by the policy committee on our agenda for tonight under updates, Deputy Chief Walker will talk to us about the City Police Department's response to those recommendations. So I would ask that you please have your minutes near you to help guide you as Deputy Chief Walker talks to us about those recommendations and how the police department is considering or is planning to implement those recommendations that were provided by the policy subcommittee. Any questions on the policy and procedures subcommittee information I've shared? Okay, and now to the traffic stop subcommittee. I remember Joe Lysett had put in a number of hours and time and commitment to that committee, and unfortunately his priorities are such that he has had to tender his resignation from CPAC. And Cam, Ryan, and Frank, the three of you are members on the traffic stop committee, subcommittee. We also have Lieutenant McFadden, I think. Captain McFadden is on that, is working with the police department with the members of the subcommittee members from CPAC. So which of you gentlemen would please rise to the occasion and serve as the chairman for that subcommittee? Would it be you, Cam, you, Ryan, or you, Frank? And we don't have to do it by motion. Any one of the three of you can volunteer. And your mics are still muted. I can see the signal, so if you're talking, I can't hear you. So please unmute your mic and state your volunteerism.
Madam Chair,
Did
I
you hear
volunteered.
somebody? Oh, go ahead, Cam.
Madam Chair, I volunteered to take over that role.
Thank you very much.
I second the nomination.
Well, since we didn't do it as a motion, I know you seconded the nomination, but that just means that we are all, I believe all of us are very much so pleased, Councilman Shields, that you are taking on the helm and moving forward. I see hand claps and thumbs up. So I'm sure everyone is excited, and I thank you. Thank you for making that simple and easy. Wendy Stiver, as we're getting ready to move to her, with giving us the mid-year audit report updates. She will work along with you, Cam. She sends usually a Google poll out to set up the meetings for the subcommittees. And we just ask that everyone would please very promptly respond to that Google poll that you get to select your dates so that those dates can be locked in and we would have the opportunity to use the city's Zoom link to have those meetings. And again, thank you, Mayor, for letting us use the city's Zoom link to effectuate these meetings. Really appreciate that.
Madam Chair.
Wendy? Yes,
Madam
sir.
Chair, before Wendy starts, if I may, I need to run off for a 6:30 meeting. And
Yes, sir.
I did want to add a quick comment, if I may. You mentioned how long the report was from the Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation. It's really not that long. The appendices take up most of that. So I'm going to ask Bethany here if she could get the link and make sure she emails that to everyone on CPAC so you can look at those pages that Councilmember Harris mentioned. But really, if you look at the executive summary as well, it's really not that scary to look at. It's not that long. And it really does go hand in hand with the work of this council. So I do think it would be important for everybody to take a look at that. And then Councilmember Harris, I think, mentioned the new ordinance that we have for First Amendment rights and demonstrations. And if y'all haven't had a presentation on that, I would recommend maybe on your next agenda that Heather Malloy give you a full update on that ordinance. And as I said, when we passed it the other day, if it can be amended if anybody has some good ideas or thoughts to further amend that ordinance as well. But lastly, once again, I just want to thank you all, CPAC council members, for your service, the time you're putting into this, and how, and particularly our new high school members. You'll be on the next council meeting for approval, and I'm glad you alerted me to the new openings. I'll go ahead and try to get a couple of nominations going for that as well. But thank y'all for your service.
Thank you
Thanks,
for your
Mayor.
time, Mayor. We really appreciate you taking time to be with us tonight.
Yes, ma'am. And you
Have a
want,
good evening.
you run a great Zoom meeting, I may say, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you,
Very
sir.
organized.
I appreciate it. I got a good team to work with.
That's right. Bye, everybody.
Have a
Young
good
play.
evening. Bye-bye. And let's see, that's Holly Malloy. I'm just writing that down so we can plan.
That is Heather Malloy, and she
Oh,
actually
Heather?
is on tonight, Twan.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. So we'll ask her if she will prepare to do a presentation to us. Hello, how are you? Thank you for
Good.
joining us tonight.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. So yes,
And
I
now
would be happy to do that for you at the next meeting. We have 4 new ordinances that have to do with First Amendment demonstrations. And they also hit on the new Open Carry Act that will become effective statewide on August 15th. So I'd be happy to go over those with you.
Thank you. Our next meeting is October the 7th.
Okay, October
If
the
you would
7th.
please put that on your calendar, October the 7th at 5:30. Thank you so very much. Really
Will do.
appreciate
Thank you.
that. Thank you. Now, Ms. Stiver, we're ready. Oh, any other questions or comments? Looks like we're ready. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Are we good to go? Twan, can you just give me a confirmation that you can see my screen?
You're
Yes, I
good,
can.
Wendy.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I actually, the mayor has actually already received this briefing, and so he picked a good time to step out, so he doesn't. This is not new material for him. What I'm going to go through here are just the highlights of our mid-year audit report. I'm working on that report. It needs quite a bit of editing. If you recall, the one-year audit report was quite lengthy. And we're doing a little reformatting to really focus on what's important rather than just having a checkbox type approach to giving you updates on the audit. And so we want to lead off with some of the successes or the department successes, completed recommendations and programs. And this is just a high level overview. I'm not going to get into the weeds on which specific audit recommendation touches all of these successes, but I'd be happy to provide that if anybody's interested. And so this is basically the policies and plans that were updated or created according to audit recommendations. Traffic unit, community outreach, recruiting, internal affairs, use of force, complaints, policy review, and training. In addition to this, the 5-year strategic leadership plan was created, and several elements of that satisfy the recommendations of the audit, as we've discussed in other meetings. For training, this is just a list. It's not all the training the department gets, but it's a list of all of the training that's mentioned in the audit or is connected to the audit. And one of the training topics that wasn't specifically identified in the audit, but is definitely a huge progress for the department is the ethical policing is courageous. That particular training is active bystandership or intervention, peer intervention training, and it's being adapted more nationally under the name ABLE. So you might hear EPIC or ABLE if you're paying attention to what's going on in policing. They're somewhat interchangeable. ABLE is kind of under the wing of Georgetown Law, and EPIC was created and implemented by the New Orleans Police Department. As for data collection and analysis, one of the very significant changes that we made was the implementation of a new policy to collect data on all traffic stops through field contact cards. And even though he's not on the call, I'm going to give a lot of credit to Captain Bruder for his work in implementing this. And this is a sort of a temporary measure. The audit recommended that we create an extra data field in the state traffic citation system. And so our folks have been really working hard with the state to negotiate this. The state has agreed to do it. That's that SC CATS you see below on the last line. They've agreed to do it. The city is going to pay for it. We're hoping to have that done by the end of 2021. But you know, they're changing a large software system, so that's going to take a little bit of time and work. And David Crosby in our intelligence unit really worked hard on this and deserves a lot of credit for getting that across the finish line. So in the meantime, though, we're collecting data that we can collect through our field contact cards. And we've got a little bit to share with you on that later. The other two big things here are the partnerships with Justice Innovation Lab and the Center for Policing Equity. These are both independent organizations that are receiving funding through other sources like corporate donors who are very interested in supporting police innovation and reform. The Justice Innovation Lab is also working with the Solicitor's Office that was founded by Jared Fishman, who was one of the lead federal prosecutors in the Walter Scott case, if that name sounds familiar. And so he left the Department of Justice and created this organization with the goal to bring together big data resources to link together our data sets and look at potential improvements from that direction. I just got an update from their data scientist, and they're estimating it'll probably take 3 to 4 months for them to complete the analysis on our data and have a preliminary report for us. That second is a proposed partnership with the Center for Policing Equity. We've met a couple of times with their folks, and their folks are going to put together a proposal and a scope of work plan and present that to us at the end of this month. The Center for Policing Equity has done a lot of great work with other organizations, and what they do is analyze data and then make policy recommendations to support the goals and objectives of both the organization and the community. If you are familiar with Philip Goff, who has done a TED Talk and a lot of national interviews on the big news networks and NPR and things like that, Phil Goff founded the Center for Policing Equity. This slide is about you, and I think this meeting itself is really evidence of the successes of CPAC. Finding 32 in the audit was that CPAC was lacking some structure and clarification on what your role is. And I've got to give a lot of credit to Tuan and your leadership in the last 2 years. You really have supported a lot of improved structure and formats with this group. And I think the reports that we're getting where, at the beginning of the meeting, we actually are hearing some concerns from the community, and this organization is being used as a communication tool to identify concerns and bring them forward to the police department is really one of the goals for which CPAC was created. And so it's exciting to see the development here. Obviously, we're going to go over the recommendations or the policy recommendations in the department's response later in the meeting. And I don't have to tell you again how proud we are of that new crime lab. Those of you who were able to go out there really can, spoke to the work that went into that to get that up and running. So next steps, these are just a few of the next steps. There's some other stuff going on as well. The big project, in addition to setting up these partnerships with these other organizations and getting that analysis back from them, is this public-facing audit tracking dashboard. We are working on this. It's in the draft stage, and here's a screenshot of it. This is not the actual dashboard, but as you can see, what we're doing here is identifying the major sections of the audit, the categories, so that you can click on this pie chart, drill down into that to see the findings, the recommendations, current status. And we're putting together a bunch of documents that we're going to hopefully link back to this dashboard, so you can click through the dashboard to the policies and the reports that are relative to those sections of the audit. So whereas with the 1-year report, we had a very long document that was pretty static. And, that method allows us to give you an annual or an every 6-month update on the completion status of the audit recommendations, whereas this dashboard will be a little bit more dynamic, and we can update it perhaps on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, whichever works most effectively for the particular recommendation involved. And so not all of these recommendations are going to be updated on a monthly basis. But those that can be updated will be updated, and the community will be able to go into this dashboard and see where we're at with all of these recommendations. So moving on, actual data and analysis. I've got to throw a few caveats here. One is all of the data, or almost all the data used in this section of my update, came from the PDI website, the Police Data Initiative, which is on the City of Charleston Police Department's website. There's a page that has the dashboard that Paul mentioned. There's also a internal affairs dashboard on there where you can see information about use of force data and things like that. Most of this data comes from there. It is published in several formats, including CSV. Anybody can download the data sets and produce charts or mapping with it. It includes latitude, longitude data. And so the first thing we looked at is what's going on with traffic citations. And so we've got 2015 to 2017 and then 2019 to 21 for comparison purposes. And of course, 21 is only half the year because we're only halfway through the year. 2018 is missing because we changed our data systems in 2018. And so we don't have a complete year of data on that PDI website. But this gives you kind of a good before after. And what's critical here, over to the side, you can see what the abbreviations VLV, HMV, and DLV stand for. All of the citations were coded according to the South Carolina bench book or definitions for types of violations. HMV is a hazardous moving violation. That includes offenses like DUI, speeding, and offenses that contribute to accidents like failing to yield or driving the wrong way on a one-way street. The accident section down there on the bottom, those are hit and run or failure to report accident violations. The violations that cause accidents are included in the HMV section. So what's important about this graph is that you can see over time, the percentage of citations issued by officers are mostly these hazardous moving violation citations. So there's fewer vehicle license citations being written and more hazardous moving violations as a percentage of total violations. And that means that our officers are spending more time writing tickets for the kinds of offenses that contribute to accidents. As we heard at the beginning of the meeting, a lot of the concerns and complaints were about things like speeding and dangerous driving behaviors on different streets. And so this tells us that our officers are out there addressing those issues as they come up. The next slide addresses the data collection through the FCCs. As I mentioned already, all officers are required to complete a field contact card documenting their traffic stops for every proactive stop they make of vehicles and of people and people on bicycles. And so what you see there is a drastic increase in the total number of field contact cards that were written starting in January, and an increase in those that were created for traffic stops. The stop data, or that orange line, comes from the CAD data. And because that gray line and the orange line move very tightly together, that tells me that we've achieved a high level of consistency and compliance in the creation of these records compared to the number of stops that officers are making. So the policy worked to achieve what it was trying to achieve. And again, a lot of great credit to Captain Bruder for getting this implemented. It's possible that we will never see those lines converge. And that's because the CAD data and the FCC data isn't exactly aligned. So you could have more than one officer in CAD on a traffic stop in some cases, but only one card is created for that. So that, we may never actually see those lines on top of each other, but moving tightly together is a really good sign that we're getting a high level of compliance. The next slide these are 2021, so the first 6 months of stops. And this is strictly from the field contact cards. So these are traffic stops with citations, or the TSC, and traffic stops with warnings, or the TSW. And on the left side, you can see total numbers broken down by race, where the warning stops are in orange and the citation stops are in blue. And then on the right side, you can see those broken down as a percentage of interactions distributed by race. The last slide is this is from the newly collected data. Captain Bruder helped me with this. And this is the breakdown of searches on stops based on whether or not it was a pedestrian stop, a traffic stop with a citation, or a traffic stop with a warning. And if you look at the audit, this is an item of concern in the audit, which is why we're looking at this. And so this is the very first time we've really been able to say we have all the traffic stops in front of us and we can see what the distribution of search decisions are based on race and what the outcome of the stop was. We have to be careful in interpreting this data. It doesn't answer all the questions. And I think good data should prompt us to ask more questions, and which tends to lead to more data and then more questions and more data, which is how we spend a lot of time if we go down this particular rabbit hole. So with that is the kind of the mid-year report with the highlights. Are there any questions?
Any questions, council members? So
I have a question.
Leave that slide up. Please leave that.
You want to leave that one up?
Yes,
Okay.
Wendy. Go ahead, Councilman Grant. I'm sorry. Councilwoman Grant.
Wendy, what is your interpretation of this, of the data you just presented to us regarding traffic stops?
So basically one of the things I have to point out here is if you look at the audit, they explain their methodology in the audit, which is, things like regression analysis and chi-square analysis. We're not doing that level of analysis here. This is just basically raw data. And when we look at raw data, we can look at trends and compare patterns and then ask more questions. And so my interpretation of this is that there is a difference. There's an identifiable difference in the outcomes and the search decision for traffic stops and warnings and pedestrian stops. There's a pattern here, but we don't really know what's causing it. We can take this and look a little bit deeper and look to see if there are other patterns in the data that might answer some of those questions. So it doesn't, I can't draw a lot of conclusions based on this data, but there is definitely some patterns here that should prompt us to ask more questions.
And in what format are those questions being asked?
So this is where those partnerships with Justice Innovation Lab and the Center for Policing Equity come in. So when we sit down with, especially the Center for Policing Equity, we can ask them like, hey, we're seeing a pattern here, and these are, we'd like to know more about what some of the factors are and whether or not the distribution of these data points are relevant to any other thing. So when you look at the audit, they got into like the time of day. Are these stops being made where there's more searches at specific times of day? With Justice Innovation Lab, one of their goals is to take our prosecution data and work backwards into these stops to see if the searches are meeting the objectives of the search, right? So if I'm conducting a search of cars in a high crime neighborhood, are those searches yielding outcomes that are actually contributing to reduction in crime? So if we're getting a lot of gun crime in a specific neighborhood and the goal of the search is to prevent gun crime, is that really effective? Are we achieving our goals through that tactic? And so I think it's important to say that we need to be able to look at larger data sets and connect everything together. And if we're not meeting our objectives, in other words, if we make a lot of stops, do a lot of searches, and we're not actually finding any contraband, is that an effective method to continue using in that specific neighborhood?
And I guess the thing that strikes me the most is the inequity regarding searches based on race.
Yeah, and that's and that is something that is showing up in data all around the country. And I know we've talked before about Frank Baumgartner's work, but I point back to that. That is a key theme of his book, if you haven't read it yet, where that is, something that they're looking at in terms of trying to determine whether or not, the fact that there's consistent patterns actually leads to a productive outcome.
Does that have anything to do with training? I mean, could this be related to training?
It could be. We definitely need to know more information about this. Like, we might find, say officers that were hired in a specific year are conducting more searches and, that are not producing the outcome desired by the search. And we might look at that and see what kind of training those officers receive. I mean, those are good questions to ask. We should definitely ask them.
Thank you.
This is just the very beginning of looking at these particular data sets. We have so much more work to do.
Are there any other questions by any other council members? Looks like Kat, are you raising your hand? Councilman Ezell?
Wendy, you did an excellent job presenting this, and the outstanding statement you made there is that when you look at these data as raw data, you do not get the entire picture. You've got to know the circumstances, the location, a multitude of factors. And yeah, when statisticians take these data and expand them and interpret them without the complete picture, you can draw most any conclusion that you wish to and justify it. But you did an excellent job making that presentation.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ezell. Councilman Harris, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Wendy, the audit indicated that there were areas of racial disparity. The new data set that we have for traffic allows us to begin to look at, our change policy, so we can do a before and after with this data. Where are the other data sets that might inform discussions by the traffic stop committee of just a trend, whether or not the trend in disparity in traffic stops continues, or there are other areas of disparate racial experiences that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so the actual mid-year audit report, I'm kind of shifted my focus, and I'm trying to get this dashboard live as soon as possible. So the dashboard can take over informing you where we're at in terms of making progress with the audit, and then the audit report can have more data in it. And so I've pulled a lot of data, and that will be incorporated in that report. And then, again, this partnership with CPE, I think will help to answer more questions, because they can do that kind of analysis on the data with multivariate, sets of data, versus just simple comparisons between raw data.
And will the innovation labs work provide additional data about racial disparities and trends?
Yes. So it's kind of two different approaches. CPE is really going to focus on policing data. JIL is definitely more focused on the court data or the prosecutor data, and then connecting that to police data. And so it's kind of like a two-pronged approach to get at some of these questions and reveal that. But here's the thing, there's a whole ton of questions we can ask with the raw data that we have now. And if there's a specific set of data or a question or comparison you want to see, we can pull that together and take a look at it in any of these meetings and, see what the relationships are. I found some interesting things while I was, playing around with the comparisons myself. And one of those was that there seems to be a higher percentage of calls to the police about weapons that correlates in an interesting pattern with calls to police about violent crime in general, right? And so and again, it's very raw data, and it doesn't necessarily answer all the questions, but when I look at things like that and you see patterns come out of those data sets, it starts to look to me like we are seeing an increase in the relationship of people calling the police about weapons issues against violent crime. Does that mean that more and more violent crime is involving weapons? I don't know. We definitely need to look at more data and ask more questions to get to that answer. But there's a pattern there that's interesting.
Yeah,
and so
just
all
one
of this
more.
data has patterns that we can look at.
Yeah, one other question specifically for, are there changes that are being made? I think in the earlier slide you indicated there were changes that are being made to the policy and directives in the area of traffic. Is this data being used to help make some of those changes or to inform those changes?
So that's primarily what CPE does. If you look at some of their other work, and so they did a huge project in Las Vegas where they looked at the data and then they made policy recommendations to the department. The department implemented those policy recommendations. CPE went back into the data sets, and they were able to show conclusively that there was a change in the outcomes relevant to the change in policy. And so, like similar to this slide here, where we made a policy change, we looked at the data, and we see that we're getting the results that we were hoping to get. This is a very simple analysis, and this is kind of on my skill level as far as data analytics go. I can compare these data sets and conclude that we're achieving the results we want. To get into, like I said, multivariate or data sets with multiple variables, we need the support and help from organizations like JIL and CPE. So I'm confident that moving into the end of this year, Justice Innovation Lab is going to have some work done and be prepared to discuss that with us. And then CPE will basically just be getting started. CPE has already conducted an initial assessment of our data and data gaps that will, guide their scope of work. So hopefully they'll be able to move pretty quickly once we get an agreement in place to partner.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Wendy? Because actually that question that Councilman Harris asked is a good lead into the next item that Deputy Chief Walker is going to talk to us about, CPD's response to the policy recommendations from the minutes from the June meeting. Any other questions for Ms. Stiver? Wendy, thank you for that wonderful presentation, very informative. And I do have a question about disparities, but I'm going to hold that to when we get to Chief Reynolds, which is kind of a follow-on to what Councilwoman Grant was talking about.
All right. Yeah, the only question I have is I think we should ask Mr. Goff or Dr. Goff to attend one of these meetings when we agree to work with them. I think that would be fantastic if we can get him. He's a little busy. He's kind of he's kind of on in high demand, so we might not be able to get him, but hopefully we will.
Okay. Let us know, and we'll be able to include him in the agenda at the appropriate time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. I will cue this up here. Hold on a second.
I did see Deputy Chief Walker on. Yeah, there he goes.
Ms. Twan, this is Tony Cretella. I'll be filling in for DC Walker
Oh, okay.
in just the
All right.
speaking portion.
Okay, got you. Thank you, Captain Cortello.
I've got the slideshow up if you're ready.
Yes, ma'am. Let me close out my window because I have the slides show up. All right, go ahead. So some background is that the CNA audit recommendation 32.2, it stated that CPD should leverage the Citizen Police Advisory Council to gather community feedback on policies and procedures. The next one is that CPAC formed policy subcommittees in September of 2020, recommended policy reviews, which the first one was GO10, which was a complaint process. I believe that myself and Lieutenant Bailey went through the policy on GO10 with you. We got some feedback and we are working on that. And then following the recommendations that were presented from the last CPAC meeting and voted on in May of 2021, and with Madam Chairman presenting a formal presentation to the chief, that we have what you guys recommended and our response to it, which I think is a great starting point on this relationship that we have. Next slide, please. So the first recommendation, it talks about the written process. I believe last time Ms. Doris Grant stated that it was hard to navigate the system in reference to how to file a complaint with CPD. And that in terms of that, it was hard to locate it on our website. And I did acknowledge that our website is a little bit convoluted in terms of finding the actual brochure that we have on there. So we already have the brochure under a link. Sergeant Dubose, who is helping us with our website, he's also our CALIA accreditation manager, is going to be tasked with updating the site to display it more prominently and add it to the PDI website through the GIS as well. And what we've also been doing is going to community meetings and passing out a different brochure that talks about a citizen's right if they want to file a complaint in the process through it. So more than just putting on the website, we're also tackling it from the community side of passing out these brochures. Next slide. So right here, this is where the pamphlet is currently. Like I said, it's hard to navigate through unless you really know where it is on the website. And the next slide is going to show the actual layout of the pamphlet. And it talks about what is a professional standards office, kind of who we are in our mission statement. You know, how do you file a complaint? What's going to happen when you file a complaint? All the different ways to file the complaint. And on the blue side, it kind of walks you through the complaint process. And that, to me, that's the most important part, because citizens want to know what happens when I file the complaint. Where does it go? And that walks you through that process. Next slide. And I believe they did email you this brochure back in May. If you'd like another copy of it, please let me know and I'll be happy to give it out to you guys. The next recommendation from CPAC was GO5, the written directive system, is that the subcommittee voted to recommend that CPD add language to 5.5 as an issuing authority to include CPAC as, quote, the authorized to propose new or updated GOs or suggest to purge general orders, and to authorize a 30-day review and comment period for CPAC while proposed general order changes are under review by the Accreditation Office, the Office of the City of Attorney, and the Human Resource Coordinator. What we are going to do is put in 5.5 the language that's going to state is that to acknowledge CPAC may review the policies from time to time and offer feedback to CPD. What we wanted to get away was that specific 30-day review, because a lot of times it might take longer and it might take shorter, or that need a sense of urgency. So we thought putting something generic in there would give CPAC the ability to look at what they want to look at as the, to review any policy they want without keeping you stringent to the timeline. Any questions on that recommendation?
Yeah, Tony, it's
Yes, sir.
The notion was to make certain that as you guys were moving forward, that we didn't get in the way. So I don't, so the time to time is just not quite specific enough for me or definitive enough for me, but thank you for the response.
Okay, thank you. Next one.
Captain Cretella, one comment from recommendation 1, if I've got a second, is, I know I've mentioned this to you in the past, if we could get that also in Spanish.
Yes, we found a way to do that. That's actually really easy through, I believe it's the Firefox web browser that we are actually working on producing it. The translation took us time just to make sure it was adequate in what the brochure said in our translation, but we are working on that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You want to go on to recommendation 3, Wendy? So the proposed was that the subcommittee voted to recommend that the language contained on pages 5 and 6 of the CPAC guidelines, which is the Citizens Police Advisory Council, pertaining to transparency on matters concerning citizen complaints, be incorporated into GO10, and that the general public be made aware of this provision within the CPAC guidelines. And what we are going to do is on our website, we are going to add a special tab for CPAC and have everyone's pictures and bios, as long as they're willing to have their information out there with their email address, so that any complaints that come forward, if the citizens don't feel comfortable coming to us and they have that trusted partnership with you as a representative, that you'd be the conduit and helping them come to us. And this happens a lot more often or not. When people make complaints, they will come in maybe with a family member or with a religious figure, but a religious representative, just for that sense of, trust and compassion with them. And, we do encourage that. And we are going to have Sergeant Dubose reach out to each one of you guys and get this process moving. It is a fairly easy process to add this to our website. The only thing it's going to take is coordination with you all from CPAC and getting this moving. And we could hopefully have it up and running within 30 days if the stars align. Next one, Wendy.
Comment?
Yes, sir.
So there will not be language in GO10 that references CPAC?
No, sir. We're going to keep that in GO5 under 5.5.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And the last one was pertaining to the after action report. And the hope was, I'm not going to read this whole paragraph, is that to request the document statistical data on the citizen complaints. So we are going to get that information to Ms. Twan for CPAC guidelines. We're going to present it to her so that she understands the software that we use and the way that it kind of replicates it. And we're going to explain to her, why we did what we did, so she has a better understanding, and she could present that to you all along with, I forget what page it is within the after action report, but those two should marry up evenly and hopefully give you a better idea of maybe what you're looking for. But once again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to myself or DC Walker, and we could kind of walk you through that again. And everything we're going to provide to Ms. Twan is essentially in the after action report, just in a different format. Any questions on that recommendation? Hearing none, that is it then. Does anybody have any questions in reference to these formal recommendations and our proposals?
I just have one. Just the only thing I would say is on when you're going to post the pictures and all that with the CPAC, we probably should have a very quick training on how to develop almost like a process, and I think that maybe our chair who should may want to do that, a procedure for us on how we should handle those and how we should get that escalated so that it doesn't die on the vine with us either.
Absolutely. I think we could handle that just even via simple email. We could write out kind of a flow chart, if you will, if you do receive a complaint or if someone wants to meet with you to come to our office or different ways to file a complaint, that we can make that an easy transition just so we're not holding anyone up or holding the complaint process up. And once again, maybe give CPAC a quick tutorial on the complaint process and what it entails in full, from filing a complaint to the disposition side, just so everyone is aware of it. It's what we give our officers so they know what's going to happen when a complaint goes through. And if you guys are going to be part of this process now, I think it would be just fair to you. So when people ask you questions, you are knowledgeable about it.
Thank you.
So maybe we could put that on the next CPAC agenda if you guys choose to do so. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you.
It looks like your audio might have gone out, Twan.
She's saying, Paul, I think that's a great idea. We still can't hear you. Okay, she's going to type it out. And she's typing what I would say, Madam Chair, one of my comments is with all these, we've got a lot of specific, pretty intense things to review that we're talking about for our upcoming agenda. There may be an occasion where it may be a good idea to call a special meeting for, it doesn't have to be a 2-hour meeting, but maybe for sometimes these targeted presentations where we isolate a meeting just to those, because as we add these onto these meetings, they just, we're packing so much into one of these meetings that we can't ever get to anything in depth.
Twan did just send a message that she wanted to ask why the recommendations have not been accepted.
Captain Curtella, I believe that would be directed at you.
So I believe that we did accept the recommendations. Maybe I didn't come across clear in that. So we did accept the recommendations, and then the PowerPoint was our response to the recommendations from, I believe it was the May meeting where you guys proposed those formal recommendations.
Mr. Chair, if I could, Captain, your responses are intelligent responses and they work, but the recommendations with specific language. And my question would be why the specific language that we asked for was not incorporated. If we could have that understanding while we proceed with with what you're going to be doing anyway.
And specifically, are you talking about all of them or a certain one?
Well, I mean, in issue instances where we request, well, the recommendation was for language to be inserted into, I guess the last one in particular, where you're talking about a separate website with posting, and that there will not be language, a specific language mentioned, CPAC mentioned in General Order 10.
And that was a conversation we had with our legal staff. And this was one of the best, I would say, outcomes that we could come up with that would be fair to CPAC and fair to us. I'm not sure if fair is the right word, but I would say it was a good melting point, if you will. And this was the outcome that we had.
So the language is a result of legal's observations?
Yes, sir. We consulted with legal just to make sure that we are within our boundaries. And that was a conversation that we had, and that's what we came up with.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Thank you for asking the question, and thank you for carrying on, Jerry, because that's exactly where I was going. My concern is that I thought the reason for the policy subcommittee even being set up and for CPAC to review these policies and procedures that the police department has was to determine areas for improvement and to be seriously considered. I'm a bit concerned that it appears that the only consideration was simply to add CPAC members to a page with pictures and guidelines.
I believe
Am
in
I
general.
misinterpreting that? And maybe Captain Cretella, we may need the chief to respond to the concern that I offered up.
So I think you maybe I didn't come across better my communication. Wendy, can you go back to, I believe, recommendation number 1 that talks about general, I'm sorry, the recommendation number 2. I'm sorry, Wendy. Can you go back to recommendation number 2? Next slide. There you go. So in 5.5, that we are going to add language to this specific policy that's going to reference CPAC specifically in our general orders, that you may review the policies from time to time and offer feedback to CPD. This is just our response. I don't have that exact crafted language yet. We're waiting on city legal to get back with us, but this is where it specifically acknowledges CPAC. Yes,
Captain
Mr. Harris.
Cretella, what I read in this is I would think that, so there, as I read this on a committee, it doesn't look to me like they're asking you to acknowledge them. They're asking to be involved in an actual policy process. So, I think that's where your discrepancy may be. So in looking at this, it's either going to be accepted or rejected with a rationale for that as written, not, and I think that's probably the frustration. I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but that's what I'm reading. As I read this, that's what I'm interpreting.
And the reason why I'm speaking up is because I did attend that policy committee meeting, committee's meeting, when they discussed these policies and the recommendations that they were going to present at CPAC's June meeting. I'm just concerned that, just as Paul said, to acknowledge implies that we're just going to check a block. And I think from the community standpoint, what we're seeing in the community and what we're seeing with these various reports, the audit and now the special commission's recommendations, the police department needs to consider doing more than just a mere acknowledgement. There needs to be a little more credence and inclusion of citizens' concerns in the policies and procedures to work towards this positive improvement in the disparities that keep rising to the top on these various reports that we're receiving.
like I said, the response is just something in general. When our attorneys get together, it'll be more than just the one liner here. I can assure you of that. So once they're done coordinating it, we could present it again if you want in the next CPAC meeting. Is this what I'm hearing? So I believe what I'm hearing, just to make sure, is that the response in red, this is just a simple response from us. You guys feel like that's not enough. And I'm just letting you know this is something in general, but we will get the specific language put in there and we will let you know before we actually put it in the policy itself.
What I would say is, and I'm not being flippant, even if you write this out formally, you're basically saying from time to time when we feel like it, we may call them in and let them look it over. And that's really what it translates to for anybody who wants it to look like that. So it's really, I think, what the policy committee is doing, and I would even say is build into the process. Is there going to be a period where, as you're going through this, whether it's 30 days before it's delivered, 30 days at the beginning, or 10 days, whatever it is, where there's a formal review period for comments from the public, which would be channeled through CPAC?
Okay, if you guys give me a little bit more time, I will try to get back with you some more clarity to address these questions so that we can present, I would say, more accurate language specifically within policy.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So let's make sure that we put you back on the agenda for the next meeting. I appreciate the fact, and I believe I can speak for the council. We appreciate the fact that you tried to rapidly get a response to those actions that were recommended at the June meeting. And I think to really show that the police department is looking towards positive activity, positive change, that would probably be best. So we'll put you on the agenda for the next meeting.
I appreciate that, and I will have
Thank
more
you.
distinct language
Okay.
governed in there, and rather than just this one sentence for you guys. So I appreciate your working with me on that.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Chief Thompson, your hand is raised, sir.
I took it down just based on your comments, Twan. None of this is unreasonable. And this is why we present it, so we can get the feedback and, and make it a more open and positive conversation. We appreciate the feedback, and that's I'm taking notes as Tony is, and we'll make sure that we follow up and present a more detailed response.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr.
We
Harris has his
appreciate
hand up
the time
too.
and effort too. Say it again, Bethany.
Mr. Harris has his hand up.
Councilman Harris, you're muted.
No more comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Community outreach, will that be Bees Ferry traffic flow is Captain Cretella, and then Captain Cretella, are you also doing community outreach, or is Deputy Chief Walker doing that?
No, I will take care of Bees Ferry, and I believe Captain McFadden will take care of community outreach.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So as you know, complaints do come in to reference traffic between collisions and speeding complaints, and we do investigate those. I did get with our traffic commander at that point, which was Lieutenant McFadden. She did take down that information and pass it on to her officers. And once again, we did have a shift change in command just due to a promotion, and Lieutenant Krasowski's over that. So he is aware of it, but the timeliness of this is, I would say, rather interesting, because with back to school coming up and the more traffic flow on Bees Ferry and Glen McConnell, we will have our officers out there monitoring those intersections, just to ensure the safety of all involved. But we are aware of that, and we are looking forward. Also, I said, with school coming up and the additional traffic that we're going to have within that area.
Thank you. Any questions for Captain Cretella dealing with the Bees Ferry traffic flow? Thank you. Community outreach, Captain McFadden.
Yeah, good evening. The past couple of months, we've been focusing on our positive police encounters and outreach with the youth within our communities. We were able to successfully open the Gathering Center, which is our first community center over at 22 Flood Street. If you haven't had a chance to swing by, please just contact us and we'll get you over there to look at it. So we are staffing that, and we are also using that. We have kind of two sides to it. One side is for the youth, the other side is for the community, for any of their needs, and then some programs that our family violence unit has already started initiating, including women's support group, and then a resource center and educational assistance. Also, it is for the community, so anything they need it for, they're welcome to use it, and we'll just kind of assist with getting them in there. And then some of the schools have expressed that they would like to possibly do some conferences there when they need to meet with family members of children at their schools that live in the area. So we're expecting great things out of this community center. Our second community center is still to be determined for opening. We had some structural issues with that, but that's going to be over at 1 Wilson Street. So we're still working on that one. We finished 6 weeks of Camp Hope, in which we staffed and engaged with the youth, and that was very successful, and we had a great time. We did some mentor training by West Bellamy, and that was mainly because of the community centers, and we're working with some other adult groups we wanted to attend mentor training with, and so that we can have some volunteers in those community centers with us. We did some outreach efforts at Bishop Gadsden for some hurricane preparedness, distributed some furniture to a family in need, a bike giveaway. We assisted police explorers with an event. We do continue with our pharmacy program where we distribute food to those in need. It's every Wednesday at Mall Park. We did a food drive at First Baptist Church. And we today actually just got back from our large back to school bash at the Gathering Center. If you were out there, it was pretty awesome. A lot of the community members came out and we gave away supplies to some of the youth. A lot of sports, a lot of fun. So that went very well. We also have an officer involved in mentorship and coaching at James Island for football that just started up since school starting back up. And then we're also kind of gaining momentum to develop our long-term mentor program with officers and the youth. And we'll probably use our community centers to identify, or the schools to identify some youth that needs some strong mentorship as well. My team also does business security assessments, and we did multiple business assessments throughout the past couple months. We do have some upcoming events that you'll see probably in the media or to be distributed, such as National Night Out, which was postponed, but that's slated to be a huge event. So I urge you to please just come out. That's going to be September 7th, and then River Dogs game following after. Also Dog Day, bring your dog for the River Dogs. Faith and Blue Weekend, we're planning. I've been planning with Rich Robinson for that. And also we've talked about our partnership project and some more outreach in some of these communities that we want to get into now that COVID is, well, we plan to get into, depending on what COVID does. And then obviously, as we go into the holidays, we have some major events: Halloween Howl, open house, Good Night Lights. We want to start up with the hospitals again, Santa's escort ride, and then some smaller events in some communities that we want to do some outreach in as well. So we've been very busy, and the team's been doing a great job focusing on kind of that objective that we were focused on, our outreach with the youth. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I'm Officer McFadden. This is Doris Grant. I'd like to get in contact with you regarding some collaboration for mentorship over on James Island. So
sure.
If you can get with Bethany and get my email address, or if Bethany can send me your email address, we can connect.
Yeah, that sounds
great.
great.
You, Doris.
Pardon me?
I'll send that to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Doris, actually, you have it too from that email that I sent, forwarding the information that
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
Captain
I'll get it from
McFadden
there.
sent. Yes,
Okay.
it's on that email from yesterday.
All right. Okay, I'll let them. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments for Captain McFadden? Thank you so very much. Those are some great events that are planned and that have been held. Thanks for continuing to do that. I know Vice Chairman Tamburino has been talking about us being able to improve the communication. So hopefully when we get up the lesson learning sessions, we'd be able to share those different events as well. That would be another avenue for sharing that. Now, members, just as a time check, I know we have a very involved agenda. We still have a few more items to review. It's 7:25. Is there a motion to continue the meeting for another 10 minutes past 7:30 or 15 minutes past 7:30 so we can complete the agenda?
Juan, just make it a consensus, not a motion.
Okay, if I see thumbs up, then we can do that. Jerry sent his whole hand. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much, really appreciate that. And now we're to the King Street Business Owners Outreach Request. Councilman Harris.
So, yeah, I was charged with responsibility for collecting additional information. The request actually came from Butch Kennedy of the Palmetto Hope Network. And the purpose, the goal was to establish constructive dialogue between activists, the King Street business owners, and law enforcement. The thinking was that in anticipation of the decision that would be coming down from the solicitor's office regarding the Sutherland case, that there would potentially be a point of tension. And the notion was if a dialogue could be established, perhaps that could take some of that salt out of the air. The request was that CPAC act as the neutral convener and to have skilled facilitators to facilitate those sessions. The benefit to CPAC that I discerned was that it was an activity, information collecting activity, and something that was consistent with our mission. And it was a request from community stakeholders. Problems associated with it, unresolved questions, whether we had the capacity to serve as conveners. Did we have the access to the facilitators? And then who exactly were the specific activists and the business people? So the ability to pull us together in a timely fashion. Again, where would it be held? And what the rules of engagement were all questions unanswered. The desire was to do it in a short period of time. The decision has been made. The reaction has already occurred, but I think the motion that was carried earlier regarding us perhaps convening meetings, this may fit into that as a tool that we may have in our toolkit. But the question of facilitation, ground rules, and locations are things that should be taken up if we're to respond to this kind of request in the future. That's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We can't take a vote on it at this time as we don't appear to still have a quorum present. However, if those who are still present are in agreement, Jerry, I'd like to get you with Steve Rumelin. Let's talk it through to see how we would be able, or if we'd be able to take on such action. And as far as skilled facilitators, we would need to know from the CPAC members their availability, interest, or if we have the ability to garner that type of support from some other agency.
Okay. If you're asking,
I see Paul put his thumb up. So Councilwoman Grant and Councilman Palmer, are you all in agreement with that too? Councilman Davis? Councilman Ezell? Okay. Then we'll get some information back to you. Steve Rumelin is on vacation right now, Councilman Harris. When he returns, then I'll get with him and you, and we can do a three-way to discuss further.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for researching that and getting the information. That is also, members, that is also the same citizen who sent a comment in that Bethany read for us at the beginning of tonight's meeting. Okay. And with the ride-alongs, council members, I just wanted to remind you that ride-alongs, Deputy Chief Thompson had worked along with the rest of the staff there at the police department for the ride-alongs to be established. Given the situation with the COVID-19 now, I'm not certain if you have any concerns about that. Please make sure that you provide those concerns for ride-alongs as far as if the people that you would ride along with are vaccinated. If you're concerned about that, would like to ensure that, please let, I believe that would be Deputy Chief Thompson we would inform.
I think we're going through Captain Walker now. I mean, not Captain Walker.
Or would it be
McFadden.
Deputy
No.
Chief Walker?
No, so that's still through our recruiting office. That's
Okay.
Sergeant Gibson. So that's the contact I sent you guys last time.
Right.
If you send him the information and you want any questions that you want to ask, and the vaccination question is certainly valid, or wear a mask or whatever, he'll set that up, because we're actually going to the individual officers and making sure that they're okay with it and comfortable with it. And so he'll set all that up. He actually works for Captain McFadden now. That's obviously my current position, but I mean my former position. But they'll schedule all that. There should be no issues.
Okay. So please make sure that you get in touch with either you can email Captain McFadden, since we have her email address, or contact the sergeants Deputy Chief Thompson mentioned. Chief, we are finally down to you, and we thank you for your patience and the awesome work that your staff has been doing with us. I think as you listened at the meeting, you heard the progress that is underway and has occurred. So thank you so very much, sir, for your patience staying with us and for allowing the members of your staff to work along with us. Before you get started though, Chief, Congresswoman Grant, you have your hand up? Councilwoman?
No, I'm still trying to take it down.
Oh, okay. All right, no problem. Thank you, ma'am. Chief, thank you again, sir.
Thank you, and thanks to every single person on this call. All of our council members volunteer your time. Everybody is heavily engaged in this work. I think everybody understands how important it is. As you know, because you've been involved since the very beginning, we've come a long ways. We're still not necessarily where we need to be, but I would describe this meeting, the last few meetings, as significant progress. So thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just going to kind of go through a speed round. I've got a bunch of things that I'll touch on that have been mentioned, and I'll kind of recap, and I'll add a little bit more of my thoughts on each one of them. So August 15th, an open carry law goes into effect. And that involves a lot. It's a big change in our community, in our state. It's a big change for policing. I was in a forum last week, and there's another forum next week that I'm participating in. I was on a panel with Representative Gilliard and a handful of other representatives around the state up in North Charleston. The next one is going to be on the Palmer campus, I think on August 12th, I think from 1 to 3:30. And there's going to be more discussion about open carry and just what that means to our community. And somebody mentioned earlier public safety announcements, and I think that is a good idea. I agree with that. And there are some efforts afoot, I know, by the city to post not only the new legislation when it takes effect and what the implications are, but things like signs. If you own a business, what size the sign should be, the specifics that need to be, and providing templates that people can just cut and paste and put on their businesses if they don't want people that are open carrying in their businesses. So more to come on that. We've done roll calls within our own department. I just went to a roll call on Friday. We had several master roll calls to discuss with our legal team. and others what that looks like. So it's a significant change, and it'll have an impact. There'll be people in our city that choose to carry openly. If they have a concealed weapons permit, they're now allowed to carry openly. And so there's things with that are important that we pay attention to, educate our officers, our community members, and so people can manage expectations and understand what that means. Second thing I'll touch on is violent crime. If you didn't hear, last week, on Wednesday of last week, we had 5 shot at Johnson and Hanover. One of those people died. I met with that gentleman's mother and some of their family a couple of days ago, I think on Monday, and it just shouldn't have happened. And it's something that is, the violence in our state is the worst that it's been in the history of recording of data since 1960. The violence includes the number of homicides, the number of shootings, the number of aggravated assaults. They're the worst in 2020, and 2021 is on track to be worse than last year. What does this mean? And I think Jerry brought up some good points. How can people get involved within the faith community and different community groups, sharing information, sharing solutions, sharing ideas? How can we all get involved? And that is the question tonight for me. That's the most relevant, the most timely, and the most important, because this is exigent, it's imminent, it's ongoing. It's not unique to our city. We still have a very safe city, but I can tell you we need to do better. A couple of hours after I did a press conference for those 5 that were shot, 2 more were shot that same night. So we had 7 shot, 1 dead. In the second shooting, we had a 12-year-old shot more than once, and we had a 21-year-old who is now probably going to be paralyzed for life. If that doesn't get our attention, I'm not quite sure what will. And in every one of these, there's typically little kids standing around. I've talked to a lot of mothers, and I can tell you that people in the community are tired of this. It's affecting them in a very profound way. So I like what Jerry asked was not, hey, let's blame the police or let's put the whole thing on their shoulders. What I heard was there's a lot of people that want to roll their sleeves up and do something. So I would probably put it on Christy as our central coordinator. But if there are faith groups that want to do more, there's a lot of opportunities, not just with the police department, but we can get people plugged in. We can speak to those groups if they're afraid, if there's fear coming back, specifically in certain communities, to talk about what we're doing and how we can work together. So I think a lot of good will come out of this. I still am very optimistic, but we have to really continue to work together on a whole lot of different levels with the increase in violence. The next thing I just want to talk about, Christy hit on this, and it touches on, I think, a lot of things that we're talking about, is we did an outreach event today, a back to school bash, we called it, in Gadsden Green. There was 3 barbers. Thad Miller, if you know him, he runs the family barber shop on Spring Street. I think he got the other 2 guys. So the 3 of them just sat there and back to back to back were giving haircuts. It was so positive, and it was so it was amazing. Actually, we had the grills out, we cooked out, we gave out a bunch of backpacks, and there was a moon castle, a moon bounce, and just very positive. A lot of families, a lot of kids, and it was a good day. And we need to do a lot more of that to provide hope, provide protection, provide collaboration. And Christy talked about some of the programming that will be in the gathering place, and it's amazing. If you know Catrice, she's got a passion for domestic violence. She's got a passion for helping people with resumes, job training, job placement, a whole lot of other things. And so that was a great event. And I just got a text, I think, from Paul, just on the open carry. Are businesses able to ban people from carrying weapons? The answer is yes. And there's this very specific sign that has to be placed in a business to do that. Government buildings in the city will be doing that. Private businesses are capable of doing that. And there's a specific language in the legislation to direct them how to do that. Does that answer your question, Paul?
Real quick, my question would be, I know there's a signage for you're forbidding carrying of weapons into a private business. Does the new ordinance give them the option of allowing a concealed weapon while prohibiting it in open carry, or is it a total ban or a total allow?
I don't know, Heather, if you can speak to that. It's the bottom line is it's up to the business owner.
Okay.
And they have that option. I have found that most business owners do not want open carry, and most of them don't want either. But it's up to them how they want to make that decision. The next thing is, I heard a lot in the beginning about traffic complaints. I hate to say this, but it's pleasing to me that we're getting back to some of those regular important conversations about traffic. Our number one complaint, our number one loss of life, our number one quality of life issue is always related to traffic. I think it always will be. Every community I've ever worked in, traffic is a very significant priority. It is for us. Captain McFadden ran our traffic division. She did an amazing job pivoting from some of the challenges and struggles that we had a couple of years ago. She changed the policy, she changed the training, she changed the staffing, and we have a new lieutenant. His name is Paul Krasowski, who's in there. Deputy Chief Thompson was a big part of that pivot. And I just want to make it known, very focused on traffic. We will continue to build that unit. We'll do it right. We're just consistent with constitutional policing, procedural justice, making sure that we're not loading up tickets for no reason, making sure that we're not over policing certain neighborhoods, making sure that we're focused on the actual problems that are causing the fatalities, that are causing the personal injury collisions, that are causing the complaints and the quality of life issues, and preventing death and saving lives. And I'll just tell you, we had several fatalities. One of them a couple of weeks ago involved a 19-year-old girl. And I will tell you, alcohol, speed, and attention to driving is definitely a factor. I'll tell you that we continue to focus on another collision where a driver was speeding and hit a bicyclist on the Ashley River Bridge, killing the bicyclist. And it just goes on and on. So we have significant issues with traffic. I took notes. I know Dustin took notes, and I promise you that we're paying attention to that it is a priority in all of our teams, not just the traffic division, but we're building up our traffic division, and we want to do it right. We want to make sure that we're not just, and this does speak to, I think, the questions about data, and it's okay to have searches, but are we doing it for the right reasons? Are we doing it in a neighborhood where we do have gun violence, where we do have shootings, where we have had disproportionate number of killings? Or are we just randomly doing it? And obviously, that's not going to work. So there's a lot behind, our strategies, defining those, codifying those, implementing those, training, all the things that you asked earlier. You're right on point. And these conversations are important, they're relevant, and they hit to the core of who we are, our culture, accountability, and the idea of making sure that we're touching on bias and making sure that what we're doing is the right thing for the right reasons. We still need to protect and serve our communities. Our community members want that probably more than ever now, but they want to make sure we get it right. So this work is so relevant and so important in this time with Jamal Sutherland. You've heard me say before with George Floyd, with Breonna Taylor, with all these other things that have occurred, and people have that as a marker in their minds. We have to be upfront. We have to be fairly visible and loud with these debates, with these conversations, with these decisions, with what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. Another thing that was brought up, I won't spend a lot of time on it. I thought it was answered well. Thefts from vehicles is a big issue. The only thing I'll add on to what was already said is we have repeat offenders who we're arresting, who are good for 100 plus, and you'll see an article, I think, in the paper on this one. Let's just say 50 to 100 thefts from vehicle that we arrest, who have multiple convictions, a history a mile long, and we arrest them and we charge them for 50 thefts from auto. And guess where they're at a week later, 2 weeks later? They're out committing more crime, and they're getting arrested again and again and again and again. If I sound frustrated, I'm very frustrated. So I'll just add that to the list of all the things that we're doing, because those are not easy cases to close. And like most crime, there's a very small number of people that are disproportionately responsible for almost all of those crimes. We arrest them and nothing's happening to them. I'll leave it there. Another thing that came up tonight was Latino translations. I just want to say that is a priority. Paul knows a person named Iskra, who is kind of now a part of a police foundation effort and a volunteer and doing other things. And among the things that she works very closely with the Latino community, and Iskra has offered to translate all of our documents. So not only do we have an automated way of doing that, but you have to review those to make sure that it's in the right dialect and it's going to be translated properly. So we do have a person. It is a priority. It is important. And I'll say with the policy recommendations, what came to my mind, and I think Dustin hit on it, and we don't need to reinvent it, but it's like a marriage, and we have to communicate. We have to have these conversations. We have to prioritize. We have to listen. We have to pivot, but we're not always going to agree. Sometimes we'll agree to disagree, that maybe there's a better way of doing it or a different way of doing it. I'll just tell you, we had a very robust, multiple hours discussion on each one of these things when you put it all together with the legal team, with our deputy chiefs. I was a part of some of that, and some of our general orders. There's 3 different general orders, and we said, well, it's best here. Although the recommendation is to put it in this order, we actually believe it should be in there. We agree it should be in there, but we're going to put it in another order and not in those others for a variety of reasons. There was some logic behind that. I think we need to explain that. We need to listen more, and we need to have continued healthy dialogue, conversation, debate, in modifying and changing and having an ongoing. But to answer your question, Twan, and I know you kind of had a technical glitch there where we lost you for a short period, and I know you would have been on this earlier, but you voice frustration and make sure that this committee has a tangible, meaningful voice in this process. And I just want to assure you that this committee absolutely does. I'm not saying that it's just going to be a cut and paste of everything the committee says, hey, do this, and we're just going to do it. But we did, I think, adopt every one of the things that was in there, just not exactly how it was described. And as Jerry said, it may not be enough. We may have to go back. We may have to have more conversation, and we are open to, we'll embrace that. And that's part of our, I think, mandate. And the last thing I'll just say, and I really don't want to open up a whole new can on this, but I'm glad Jerry and Butch Kennedy and others would like to have better outcomes with our activists, with the business community, with the police, with anybody else who's affected by this. In theory, that sounds great, but Jerry, I think better than I could, articulated there's a whole lot of things that go into that. Some people are disingenuous. Some people don't really have an interest in anything productive. In fact, in some cases, what we've seen is they want to break the law, and they've assaulted our officers, spit on them. They've cussed at and done all kinds of profane things in the community that, frankly, were illegal. People have a right to protest. They have a right to have their voices heard. And at great lengths, we have protected that right. We've created ordinances and other things to make sure that that's done safely. And I'll tell you, but they don't have a right to break the law and to create harm to others and create harm to our community. So that's my only little caveat in that conversation. We need to make sure that we're productive, that it's meaningful in what we're doing. And I'll end there. I think that was a lot of what was discussed tonight. I'm so thankful for this engagement, for this conversation, for the meaningful dialogue. This is what every city in America needs to be doing. And this is not an easy pivot. I do agree with, I think it was Cam's comments, or maybe it was Melvin, about Wendy's comments on data, that there's not an easy answer. We've said that from day one, that the data is complex, that when we go into certain communities and we're working on things like violent crime, there are going to be some disparate numbers. That doesn't automatically mean bias or that we're doing something wrong. but are we focused on our policies, our strategies, our methods? Are we protecting and serving in the correct way? Are we treating people with dignity and respect? Do people have a means through which they can complain, that their complaint's going to be investigated, that there's going to be accountability, and that we're going to change and address when there's a problem? Because there are problems. There's an organization our size is constantly in a position where we need to pivot and be accountable and make improvements and fix problems when they occur. So I'll stop there. And that's probably more than you wanted to hear, but hopefully I didn't go over my 10 minutes. I probably did.
Oh, no, but we needed to hear all of that. So thank you so much, Chief. Any questions for Chief Reynolds? I know it's hard to sit and listen to everything, especially when we have such an involved meeting as we did tonight. Very, very engaging, very involved. And Chief, thank you so very much for hitting all of the points that you heard that were left kind of untied for you to tie up for us. Looking at the reminders and topics for the next agenda, I did make notes that Heather Malloy has already agreed that she will attend our next meeting and do a presentation on the 4 new ordinances as well as the open carry. And then we'll have the CPD response to policy recommendations from Captain Cretella. And we may also have Ms. Amber Johnson present at that next meeting as well. Please make sure that you take a look at the flyer that I sent you that Captain Cretella and Deputy Chief Walker sent regarding the Virtual Citizens Academy. The dates have expanded, so please mark on your calendar the dates I know you have on the agenda, the 6th, 13th, 20th, and 27th of October, but we also have November 3rd, November 10th, November 17th, and December 1st. They will all be virtual, is the plan at present, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. One session will occur before our next CPAC meeting, so I wanted to make sure I drew everyone's attention to that. If you did not get that flyer with those dates, please send me an email so I could send it to you, make sure you have it. If there are no other comments or questions.
DC Thompson has his hand raised.
Oh, he does? Okay. Deputy Chief Thompson?
Yeah, just very briefly, it's just something just to continue to build. I would like so we have 6 patrol areas. Just so everybody knows, we have 6 patrol teams. And so if the group wants to, whether by email or just checking with me, I would like to have the team commander and the admin sergeant come to a meeting. Say if we pick team 1, which is Calhoun Street North to North Charleston, we can have them on the next meeting and they can introduce themselves. You put a face with a name and they can talk about what's going on in their teams. And then you guys know, as you know, whatever district you're in, you'll know the face of the team lieutenant, admin sergeant, and kind of just the general theme of the team. So I think that would be productive for meetings, and I'll keep them very brief to 3 or 4 minutes. But I think that moving forward, that would probably be good to put on the agenda.
Sounds good. Does everyone? It looks like our agenda will be pretty. We will have subcommittee reports, but we can certainly add that onto the agenda, Deputy Chief Thompson. And you just let us know if you can let me know whenever it's available for you, which teams would be able to come to the October 7th meeting. And our next meeting after October 7th will be December 2nd.
Okay, I'll just touch base with you offline, but if there's
Perfect.
no objectives from the group, we'll just start with team 1 and then just move through the teams.
Perfect. Thank you. We might be able to get 3 at the October 7th meeting and then 3 at December's, but we can talk about it so that we can at least get everybody exposed to all 6 teams before the end of the year, end of the calendar year. Those of you who have dialed in, council members, as well as those who are connected on YouTube, thank you so very much for your participation and for sticking with us tonight. We really appreciate it. If you have any concerns, any items you want to share with us, please feel free to email us or get in touch with the city so that the message can get to us. We look forward to making sure that we bring your concerns to the front and that we help to bring about a harmonious relationship between our citizens of the community and the police department. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you, Thwayne. Good meeting. Thank you, Chief, for your service.
Good
Appreciate it.
night. Thank you.